The grand chamber of the Galactic Council stretched out before Ambassador Jiho, like a cathedral of metal and light. He sat in the human delegation's seat, a small platform that hovered near the bottom of the massive circular room. Above him, arranged in ascending tiers, sat the representatives of 43 alien species. Their platforms glowed with different colors, casting strange shadows across the polished walls. Jiho kept his face calm, but his heart was pounding. He had been a diplomat for 20 years, but today felt different. The air itself seemed heavy with tension. The Veltharian Chancellor spoke first. His species looked like tall, blue-skinned humanoids with 3 eyes arranged in a triangle on their faces. His voice boomed through the chamber's translation system, converting his words into every language simultaneously. "The Galactic Council has deliberated for 6 months," the Chancellor began. "We have reviewed humanity's actions over the past 3 decades. Your expansion into new territories, your military buildup, your refusal to share certain technologies with the Council's research divisions. These actions cannot continue." Jiho said nothing. He had been warned this was coming, but hearing it officially still felt like a punch to the gut. The Kresh representative spoke next. Her species resembled large insects with crystalline exoskeletons that reflected light in rainbow patterns. "Humanity has shown a pattern of aggressive behavior," she said, her voice clicking and buzzing beneath the translation. "You colonize worlds without proper council approval. You develop weapons without oversight. You act as though you answer to no one." A murmur of agreement rippled through the chamber. Jiho noticed that not all species were nodding. Some of the smaller delegations looked uncomfortable. But the 3 major powers, the Veltharians, the Kresh, and the Thornians, were united in their position. The Thornian defense minister rose from his seat. His species were massive, bear-like creatures covered in thick fur and equipped with natural armor plates. "We propose the following restrictions," he growled. "First, humanity will establish no new colonies without express council permission. Second, all human military vessels will operate under council command structure. Third, humanity will share all technological advances with the Council's central research facility. Fourth, Council observers will be stationed on all human worlds to ensure compliance." The chamber fell silent. Jiho felt the weight of every eye upon him. These weren't suggestions. They were demands. The kind of demands you made to a conquered enemy, not an equal partner. He stood slowly, making sure his movements were deliberate and controlled. "The human delegation hears the Council's concerns," he said carefully. "These proposals represent significant changes to our sovereignty and independence. We request 48 hours to consult with our government on Earth." The Veltharian Chancellor smiled, showing teeth that looked too sharp. "The Council grants your request. We understand this is a difficult situation, but understand this, Ambassador Jiho. Humanity's reckless behavior threatens the stability of the entire galaxy. We have maintained peace for over 500 years. We will not allow one species to jeopardize that peace." The Kresh representative added, "Your people are young. You have been part of the galactic community for only 70 years. We have existed for thousands. Trust that we know what is best." Jiho felt anger flare in his chest but pushed it down. "We will return with our answer in 48 hours, he repeated. Then he signaled to his team, and together they left the chamber. As soon as they were in the private human shuttle heading back to their quarters, Jiho's assistant, a young woman named Bora, exploded with frustration. "They want to turn us into a vassal state. This isn't about peace or stability. They're afraid of us," Jiho nodded. "I know. They've been afraid since we defeated the Kresh pirates without council help. Since we colonized the Verdun system in 2 years when they said it would take 20. Since we shared our medical technology freely with the smaller species instead of hoarding it like they do." Another aide, Minho, pulled up a holographic display. "The pattern is clear. Every restriction they proposed specifically targets our greatest strengths. Our colonization speed, our military coordination, our technological innovation. They don't want to make us safe. They want to make us weak." Jiho looked out the shuttle window at the massive station that housed the council chambers. It was called the Central Nexus, a structure 300 kilometers across that served as the administrative heart of galactic civilization. Ships from 1,000 worlds came and went from its docking bays. Trade worth trillions passed through its markets. Treaties were signed in its conference rooms. And all of it, Jiho suddenly realized, depended on humanity more than anyone wanted to admit. Pull together a full report, he told his team. I want to know exactly how much the Council depends on human contributions. Technology, trade, military support, everything. The real numbers, not what they officially acknowledge. Bora nodded and started typing rapidly. I can have preliminary data in 6 hours. Good. Encrypt the transmission to Earth. Priority Alpha. The President needs to see this before we make any decisions. The shuttle docked at the human embassy section of the station. It was a modest area compared to the sprawling complexes maintained by the older species, but it was efficient and well organized, like everything humans built. Jiho went directly to his private office and initiated a secure connection to Earth. It would take 20 minutes for the signal to reach Earth, and another 20 for a response. Faster than light communication was possible, but expensive and reserved for true emergencies. This qualified. While he waited, Jiho reviewed the Council's demands again. Each one was worse than it first appeared. No new colonies without permission meant humanity's expansion would halt completely. The Council took decades to approve new colonization requests. Military vessels under Council command meant humans would have to follow orders from species that had never fought a real battle in centuries. Technology sharing meant giving up the innovations that had allowed humanity to thrive in a galaxy that initially dismissed them as primitives. And the observers. That was perhaps the worst part. Council observers on every human world, watching everything, reporting everything. It was the language of occupation, dressed up in diplomatic terms. The communication system chimed. Earth was responding earlier than expected. President Mirai's face appeared on the screen. She looked tired. It was probably the middle of the night in Seoul, where the unified Earth government maintained its headquarters. I received your preliminary report, she said without preamble. Tell me honestly, Jiho, is there any room for negotiation? Jiho shook his head. No, Madam President. The Chancellor made it clear. These are their terms. They might adjust minor details, but the core demands are non-negotiable. They want to control us. Mirai was quiet for a moment. Then we need to consider our options. I'm calling an emergency cabinet meeting. We'll have a decision for you within 36 hours. In the meantime, maintain diplomatic courtesy. Let them think we're seriously considering acceptance. Understood, Madam President. And Jiho, start making quiet preparations. If we choose the path I think we might choose, I need our people ready to move quickly. The screen went dark. Jiho sat back in his chair and stared at the ceiling. He had been a diplomat long enough to read between the lines. President Mirai was considering something drastic, something that would change everything. Outside his window, the central nexus bustled with activity. Ships came and went. Aliens of 100 species walked the corridors, conducting business as they had for centuries. Everything seemed normal and stable, but Jiho could feel the earthquake coming. The Council had made a critical mistake. They had assumed humanity needed them more than they needed humanity. They had assumed humans would accept any terms rather than stand alone. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The emergency cabinet meeting began at 3 a.m. Seoul time. President Mirai looked around the long table at the faces of her advisors. Some attended in person. Others appeared as holograms projected from various locations around Earth and the colonies. Every person at this table represented a critical piece of humanity's future. Admiral Taewoo spoke first. He was a veteran of the Kresh pirate wars, the conflict that had first shown the galaxy what human military forces could do. His uniform was crisp despite the early hour, his gray hair cut military short. Madam President, the military assessment is clear. We can survive independently. Our fleet is the third largest in the galaxy. But more importantly, it's the most efficient. Our ships are faster, our weapons more accurate, our crews better trained. If the Council tried to enforce their demands militarily, they would lose. Trade Minister Hyeram shook her head. She was younger than most of the cabinet, only 40, but brilliant. Military strength isn't enough. Our economy is deeply integrated with Council trade networks. We import rare minerals from the Kresh worlds. We export manufactured goods to dozens of species. If we leave, we lose access to all of that overnight. Do we, though? Science Director Doan leaned forward. He was a thin man with sharp eyes who always seemed to be calculating something. I've been reviewing our trade data. Yes, we import rare minerals from Kresh worlds, but those same minerals exist in systems we've already surveyed. We just haven't mined them because it was easier to trade. As for our exports, we're not selling luxuries. We're selling necessities, medical equipment, power systems, computer networks. They need our goods more than we need their markets. Foreign Secretary Junho pulled up a holographic display showing trade flow charts. Dowan is correct. Over the past 30 years, human goods have become essential to galactic infrastructure. When we introduced quantum computing to the Council, they integrated it into everything. Their traffic control systems, their power grids, their communications networks. All of it runs on human-designed systems now. So what are you saying? Mirai asked. That we have leverage? I'm saying we have more than leverage, Junho replied. I'm saying the Council doesn't realize how much they depend on us. They think we're the junior partner. But if we pulled out tomorrow, their infrastructure would start failing within weeks. Admiral Tewu nodded. My intelligence division has been monitoring this for years. Human engineers and technicians are everywhere in Council space. We're not just selling them technology. We're maintaining it, improving it, troubleshooting it. The Council species are brilliant in their own ways, but they're specialists. They've spent centuries perfecting narrow fields. Humans are generalists. We can do a little bit of everything, and we can make different systems work together. Minister Hiram still looked worried. Even if that's true, withdrawing from the Council would be unprecedented. No species has ever left voluntarily. We don't know what would happen. That's not quite accurate, said Ambassador Jiho, appearing as a hologram from the Central Nexus Station. The Relian Confederation withdrew 140 years ago. They were a minor species, only 4 worlds. The Council barely noticed their departure. And what happened to them? Mirai asked. They're thriving, Jiho answered. I did some research after our meeting with the Council. The Relians now have 11 worlds. Their economy has grown by 400%, and they maintain peaceful trade relations with several Council species on a bilateral basis. They just don't submit to Council authority. The room fell silent as everyone absorbed this information. Finally, Colony Administrator Yunji spoke up. She oversaw all human settlements outside Earth. I've been talking to the colonial governors. Every single one supports independence. They're tired of Council regulations slowing down their development. They're tired of being told which technologies they can use. If Earth decides to walk away, the colonies will follow. Mirai stood and walked to the window. Outside, the lights of Sol stretched to the horizon. 4 billion people lived on Earth. Another 3 billion lived in human colonies across 27 star systems. All of them were counting on the people in this room to make the right choice. Let me make sure I understand, she said slowly. If we accept the Council's terms, we become a managed species. We stop expanding. We stop innovating freely. We put our military under their command. We allow them to observe and control every aspect of our civilization. That's correct, Jiho confirmed. And if we reject their terms and leave the Council, we face economic disruption, possible diplomatic isolation, and an uncertain future. Also correct, said Minister Hiram. But we believe we can survive and even prosper independently because the Council actually depends on us more than we depend on them. Yes, Madam President, Admiral Tewu said firmly. That's our assessment. Mirai turned back to face the table. Then I need to ask each of you directly. What do you recommend? Admiral Tewu didn't hesitate. Leave. We're not a species that kneels. Science Director Doan nodded. Leave. Every major breakthrough we've made in the last decade came from independent research, not Council collaboration. They slow us down. Foreign Secretary Junho thought for a moment. It's risky, but I say leave. If we stay under these terms, we're finished as a growing civilization. Colony Administrator Yunji smiled. The colonies are already packing. They want out. Trade Minister Hiram was the last to speak. She looked troubled, but finally nodded. I hate the economic uncertainty, but Minister Doan is right about our leverage, and I won't help turn humanity into a vassal state. We leave. Mirai looked at Ambassador Jiho's hologram. You'll have to deliver this message. Are you prepared for their reaction? Jiho's expression was calm, almost serene. Madam President, I've been a diplomat for 20 years. I've negotiated with species that breathe methane and species that communicate through color changes. I've mediated disputes over worlds and resources, but I've never, in all that time, had to tell anyone that humanity accepts being treated as inferiors. I'm looking forward to finally telling the Council exactly what we think of their ultimatum. There's no going back from this, Mirai warned. Once we walk out, once we make this statement, everything changes. The galaxy will never see us the same way again. Good, Admiral Tewu said bluntly. Maybe it's time they started seeing us clearly. Mirai took a deep breath. Then it's decided. Ambassador Jiho, you will return to the Council in 36 hours. You will reject their terms completely. You will announce humanity's withdrawal from the Galactic Council. You will make it clear that we're leaving peacefully, but we're leaving permanently. Understood, Madam President. Admiral Taewoo, start preparing our forces. I don't think the Council will attack, but we need to be ready. Move the fleet to defensive positions around our core worlds. Yes, ma'am. Minister, hire and begin planning our economic transition. I want to know which supply chains will be disrupted and how we'll replace them. I'll have a preliminary report by morning. Science Director Dowan, I want a complete survey of resource deposits in unclaimed systems near our space. If we're going to expand without Council permission, we need to know where we're expanding to. I'll coordinate with the exploration fleet. Colony Administrator Yoonji, send word to all colonial governors. They need to prepare for evacuation of human citizens from Council space. Anyone who wants to come home can come home. Anyone who wants to stay in the colonies will be protected. I'll send the message immediately. Mirai looked around the table one more time. Any questions? Any doubts? Speak now, because after this meeting we need to be united. No one spoke. The decision was made. Then let's make history, Mirai said quietly. Let's show the galaxy that humanity doesn't need their permission to reach for the stars. The meeting ended. Advisors left to begin their preparations. Mirai stood alone in the conference room as dawn began to break over Seoul. She thought about her children, about her grandchildren, about the billions of humans who would inherit whatever world this decision created. She had no doubts. The Council had made a critical error. They had given humanity a choice between freedom and security, between independence and protection. They should have known that humans would choose freedom every single time. Ambassador Jiho walked through the corridors of the Central Nexus Station with steady, measured steps. Behind him, his entire delegation followed in formation. 23 diplomats, analysts, and security personnel. All of them knew what was about to happen. All of them had volunteered to be present for it. The grand chamber doors opened before them, massive panels of some alien metal that gleamed like gold but was harder than diamond. The council chamber was full. Every species had sent representatives. Word had spread that something important was happening today. Jiho took his seat on the human platform. He placed his data tablet on the console in front of him and waited. Around him, the chamber buzzed with quiet conversation. The alien representatives were talking among themselves, speculating about humanity's decision. Most of them, Jiho noticed, looked confident. They expected surrender. Why wouldn't they? The council had stood for 500 years. No species had ever defied them successfully. The few that tried had been economically strangled until they complied. The Veltharian chancellor called the session to order. His three eyes focused on Jiho with an expression that might have been sympathy, or might have been condescension. It was hard to tell with alien faces. Ambassador Jiho, the chancellor began, the Galactic Council acknowledges that our previous terms were perhaps overly strict. We have revised our proposal to be more accommodating to humanity's concerns. He gestured, and a holographic document appeared in the center of the chamber. Jiho scanned it quickly. The new terms were actually worse. They added economic restrictions on top of the military and colonial ones. Humanity would need council approval for any major trade agreements. Human companies would face regulatory oversight from council bureaucrats. It was a trap, Jiho realized. A cynical attempt to appear reasonable while actually tightening the noose. The chancellor expected humanity to negotiate, to haggle over details, to gradually accept increasing restrictions while thinking they were winning concessions. The Kresh representative spoke next. We believe these revised terms show the Council's good faith. They provide humanity with a framework for growth within the bounds of galactic stability. We hope your government sees the wisdom in accepting this generous offer. The Thornian defense minister added his voice. The Council has been patient with humanity. We have overlooked numerous violations of protocol. We have allowed your aggressive expansion to continue far longer than we should have. These terms are not a punishment. They are an opportunity for humanity to mature into a responsible member of the galactic community. Jiho listened to it all. The condescension, the veiled threats, the assumption that humanity had no choice but to comply. He thought about President Mirai's words. He thought about the admirals and scientists and colonists who were ready to forge a new path. He thought about what humanity had accomplished in just 70 years among the stars, and he stood up. The chamber fell silent. Every eye turned to him. "The human delegation has reviewed the Council's original terms," Jiho said clearly. His voice was calm but carried to every corner of the vast chamber. "We have also reviewed your revised terms. After careful consideration and consultation with our government on Earth, I have been authorized to deliver our official response." The Chancellor leaned forward slightly. "We are pleased that humanity has chosen wisdom over pride." "Humanity rejects your terms completely," Jiho said. "All of them. Original and revised. We reject the premise that we need your permission to colonize new worlds. We reject the idea that our military should answer to your command. We reject your claim that our technology belongs to the Council. We reject everything you have proposed." The chamber erupted. Aliens shouted in a dozen languages. The translation system struggled to keep up with the overlapping voices. The Chancellor's blue face darkened with anger. "You cannot reject the Council's terms." The Kresh representative shrieked. "You are bound by the treaties you signed." Jiho pulled out his data tablet and tapped it. A massive holographic display appeared, showing pages of legal text. "Article 47 of the Galactic Council Charter," he read. "Any member species may withdraw from the Council by providing formal notice and ceasing all Council-affiliated activities within 90 days. This article has been part of the Charter since its founding. Perhaps you forgot it existed because no one has used it in so long." The Thornian Defense Minister slammed his massive paw on his console. "This is madness. You'll be alone, isolated. Every species will turn against you." "That is your choice to make, not ours," Jiho replied. "Effective immediately, humanity is withdrawing from the Galactic Council. We will recall all our diplomats within 30 days. We will cease participation in all Council programs and initiatives. We will discontinue our financial contributions to Council operations. We will close our embassy and remove all human presence from the station." He paused, looking around the chamber. Some species looked shocked. Others looked angry. A few of the smaller delegations looked almost envious. "We will maintain peaceful relations with any species that wishes to trade or communicate with us on a bilateral basis," Jiho continued. "We have no desire for conflict, but we will defend our colonies and our citizens against any threat. We will continue our exploration and expansion according to our own judgment, not the Council's arbitrary restrictions." The Veltharian Chancellor found his voice. "You're making a terrible mistake. The Council has maintained peace and order for 5 centuries. Without us, you'll face chaos, pirate raids, border disputes, trade conflicts. You think you can handle all of that alone?" Jiho allowed himself a small smile. "Chancellor, with all due respect, we've been handling most of that for you. You just didn't notice." The Chancellor's 3 eyes widened. "What are you talking about? Who redesigned your fleet logistics network 5 years ago when it kept crashing? Human engineers. Who developed the medical protocols that stopped the Kresh plague 3 years ago? Human doctors. Who provided the tactical analysis that helped you defeat the last major pirate incursion? Human military advisors. The Council has been running on human expertise for decades. You thought we were learning from you? Actually, you were depending on us." The chamber fell completely silent. Jiho could see the realization dawning on several faces. They had never thought about it before, but now that he said it, they couldn't deny it. "I have one more announcement," Jiho said. "Over the next 30 days, every human citizen working in Council space will be returning home. Our engineers, our technicians, our medical staff, our teachers, our consultants, all of them. We're not just withdrawing our diplomats. We're withdrawing everyone." The Kresh representative's crystalline exoskeleton flashed with alarm. "You can't do that. There are treaties, contracts, all of which contain termination clauses for Council withdrawal," Jiho replied. "We've reviewed them carefully. Everything we're doing is completely legal under Council law. You wrote these rules. We're just following them." He picked up his data tablet and gestured to his delegation. "The human embassy will formally close in 30 days. Until then, we'll be available to discuss peaceful transition of our projects and responsibilities. After that, you're on your own." He started walking toward the exit. His delegation fell in behind him. As they reached the massive doors, the Veltharian Chancellor shouted across the chamber, "You'll regret this, Jiho. You'll come crawling back within a year." Jiho paused and looked back over his shoulder. Chancellor, humanity spent millennia crawling before we learned to walk. Then we learned to run. Now we're learning to fly. We're not interested in crawling anymore. Not for you, not for anyone." Then he walked out. The doors closed behind the human delegation with a deep, resonant boom that echoed through the chamber. For a long moment, no one moved. The council representative stared at the closed doors in disbelief. Outside in the corridor, Jiho allowed himself a deep breath. His hands were shaking slightly from the adrenaline, but he felt lighter than he had in years. Behind him, his aide Bora was grinning. "Sir, that was the greatest thing I've ever witnessed," she whispered. "Let's hope it was also the right thing," Jiho replied, but he was smiling too. They walked through the station toward their embassy quarters. Around them, aliens stopped and stared. News of what happened in the chamber was already spreading. Some looked angry. Some looked confused. A few looked impressed. In the embassy, Jiho initiated a secure transmission to Earth. President Mirai appeared on screen, her expression tense. "It's done," Jiho reported. "We've formally withdrawn from the council. The countdown has started." Mirai nodded slowly. "How did they react?" "About how we expected. Shock, anger, disbelief. The Chancellor thinks we'll be back within a year, begging to rejoin." "Then he doesn't know us very well," Mirai said. "Come home, Jiho. You and everyone else. It's time to start building our future." The transmission ended. Jiho looked around the embassy office. It had been his home for 6 years. Soon it would be empty, but humanity would still be reaching for the stars. The evacuation began within hours of the walkout. Across council space, human citizens received encrypted messages on their personal communicators. The message was simple and clear: return home immediately. On the Kresh medical station orbiting Thesia Prime, Dr. Youngmi finished her shift in the intensive care unit and found the message waiting. She read it twice, then looked around the facility she had helped build. For 4 years she had worked here, training Kresh doctors in advanced surgical techniques. Half the equipment in this hospital had been designed by humans. She walked to the administrative office and submitted her resignation, effective immediately. The Kresh administrator's crystalline face flickered with confusion and alarm. "You cannot leave now," the administrator protested. "You are the only surgeon qualified to operate the neural reconstruction equipment. We have 6 patients scheduled for critical procedures. Then I suggest you postpone those procedures," Youngmi said calmly, "or learn very quickly how to do them yourselves. I've left detailed instructions in the system. My government has recalled me. This is unacceptable. There are contracts, which contain termination clauses for council withdrawal." I checked. "Everything is legal." She left the administrator sputtering and went to pack her belongings. Her shuttle departed 12 hours later. Similar scenes played out across the galaxy. On Veltharian industrial worlds, human engineers walked away from factories they had designed. On Thornian agricultural planets, human agronomists stopped their consultations. On the Central Nexus station itself, human technicians shut down their workstations and headed for the docking bays. The council tried to stop it. The Veltharian Chancellor issued an emergency decree declaring that essential workers could not leave without permission. Human workers ignored it. The Kresh threatened to seize human assets. Human merchants simply abandoned their shops and warehouses, taking only what they could carry. Admiral Taewoo watched the evacuation reports from his office at Earth's Space Defense Command. His aide, Lieutenant Sujin, provided regular updates. "The merchant fleet reports 93% of human traders have already departed council space," she said. "The remaining 7% should be clear within 48 hours. "What about citizens in more remote locations?" Taewoo asked. "We've dispatched military transports to 17 outlying systems. Some people are in places that don't have regular commercial service. We're not leaving anyone behind." "Good. What are the council military forces doing?" Sujin pulled up a tactical display. "Mostly nothing. A few Veltharian patrol ships have shadowed our transports, but they haven't interfered. I think they're still in shock." Taewoo nodded. The council had built their entire civilization on bureaucracy and procedure. They didn't know how to respond to something this sudden and decisive, but the real consequences were just beginning. 3 days after the walkout, the Veltharian military logistics network crashed. It happened during a routine fleet deployment. Ships that were supposed to coordinate their jumps to a patrol sector arrived at different times, some hours apart. 2 ships nearly collided because their navigation data didn't sync properly. The Veltharian Minister of Defense called an emergency meeting. What happened? He demanded. His chief logistics officer looked embarrassed. The coordination algorithms failed. The system couldn't handle the simultaneous jump calculations. Why not? It's been working fine for 5 years. Because humans designed the current system, the officer admitted. The old system could only handle about 40 ships at once. The humans upgraded it to handle 300. But apparently, they didn't just upgrade the software. They were also running background maintenance, optimizing the data flows, fixing errors in real time. We didn't even know they were doing it. So fix it. We're trying. But sir, we don't fully understand how their upgrades work. They built on top of our original system, but they did it in ways we never anticipated. It's like they think differently than we do. The minister stared at his officer. Find someone who can fix it. Offer whatever salary necessary. Hire consultants. I don't care what it costs. But there were no human consultants available anymore. They had all gone home. On Kresh Theta, the medical crisis hit even faster. The hospital where Dr. Youngmi had worked tried to proceed with a scheduled surgery. The patient needed neural reconstruction after an accident damaged his brain. The procedure required the specialized equipment that Youngmi had been operating. The Kresh surgeons followed her written instructions carefully. They initialized the equipment, performed the scans, and began the reconstruction sequence. Halfway through the operation, the equipment shut down. Error messages flooded the display screens. The patient survived, but barely. The head surgeon reviewed the error logs and realized the problem. The equipment had detected an anomaly in the procedure and automatically stopped to prevent brain damage. But the surgeon didn't know what the anomaly was or how to fix it. Dr. Youngmi would have known. She had handled dozens of similar cases. She understood the equipment's safety protocols and knew when they could be safely overridden. Without her, the hospital couldn't perform the surgery at all. The Kresh Medical Authority issued an emergency bulletin. 12 hospitals across their territory reported similar problems. Equipment that had been working perfectly for years was now failing or showing errors that no one could interpret. On Thornia Major, the agricultural crisis took longer to appear, but was just as serious. Human agronomists had spent a decade helping the Thornians increase their crop yields. They introduced new growing techniques, new fertilizer formulas, and new pest control methods. Thornian farms that once produced 10 tons of grain per hectare now produced 30 tons. The Thornians didn't realize that the humans hadn't just taught them techniques. They had been actively monitoring the crops, adjusting the formulas, adapting the methods to changing conditions. When a new pest appeared, the humans identified it and developed countermeasures. When weather patterns shifted, they modified the growing schedules. 2 weeks after the humans left, the farm managers noticed problems. Crops in several regions were showing signs of disease. The standard treatments weren't working. They tried contacting the human agronomists for advice. The messages bounced back. No longer in service. Within the council chambers themselves, the problems were even more immediate. The central nexus station began experiencing power fluctuations. Nothing critical at first, just minor voltage drops that caused lights to flicker. The station's chief engineer, a Veltharian named Court, investigated. He discovered that the main power distribution network was operating outside normal parameters. Somehow the system was drawing more power than it should while delivering less to critical systems. He pulled up the maintenance logs and found hundreds of entries signed by a human engineer named Sujin. She had been making constant micro-adjustments to the power system, optimizing its performance, routing power more efficiently. Court hadn't paid much attention because everything always worked perfectly. Now Sujin was gone, and the system was slowly degrading. Court tried to replicate her adjustments, but he didn't understand the underlying logic. She had been thinking 3 steps ahead, anticipating problems before they occurred. He was barely managing to react to current issues. The power fluctuations got worse. 3 sections of the station lost climate control for 6 hours. The council had to evacuate those sections and seal them off until repairs could be made. Back on Earth, Science Director Dowan compiled reports from across council space. He presented his findings to President Mirai in a private meeting. "It's happening faster than we predicted," he said, pulling up charts and graphs. "The Veltharian military logistics network is operating at about 60% efficiency. Kresh medical facilities have suspended advanced procedures. The Thornian agricultural system is facing potential famine in 3 sectors, and the central nexus station itself is experiencing cascading infrastructure failures." How long until they stabilize? Mirai asked. Doan shook his head. Months, maybe years. The problem isn't that they lack competent people. The problem is that humans were integrated into their systems at such a fundamental level that they didn't even notice. We weren't just providing services. We were holding the entire galactic infrastructure together. Did we know this would happen? We suspected it. But even I'm surprised by how fast it's falling apart. The council species are brilliant, but they're specialists. They've spent thousands of years perfecting narrow fields of expertise. Humans are generalists. We can understand how different systems interact. We can see the big picture. They can't, or at least not as easily. Mirai walked to her office window and looked out at the Seoul skyline. Are we doing the right thing? People are suffering because of our decision. People would have suffered either way, Doan replied quietly. If we had accepted their terms, humanity would have stagnated. Our expansion would have stopped. Our innovation would have been strangled by bureaucracy. We would have died slowly over generations. At least this way we're free. And the council? They'll survive. They'll adapt. It will be painful, but they're not helpless. They just need to learn to do things for themselves again. Maybe this will be good for them in the long run. Mirai nodded slowly. Keep monitoring the situation. I want daily reports. And make sure our people are ready. 3 months after the walkout, Engineer Soo-jin stood on the observation deck of New Seoul Station, humanity's largest colony in the Verdun system. Through the transparent panels, she could see construction drones building a new sector of the station. Beyond them, the blue-green planet of Verdun Prime rotated slowly, its surface dotted with growing cities. She held a data tablet that monitored news feeds from council space. The reports were getting worse every day. Still checking on them? Her colleague Do-hyun asked, walking up beside her with 2 cups of coffee. Soo-jin accepted one gratefully. I can't help it. I worked on the Nexus station for 3 years. Part of me still cares about what happens to it, even after how they treated us. The council leadership treated us badly. But most of the people there were just trying to do their jobs. She tapped her tablet. Look at this. The Nexus station had another major power failure last night. They had to evacuate 6 sections. Life support dropped to emergency levels. Do-hyun shook his head. I don't understand how they let it get this bad. The power systems aren't that complicated. They're not complicated if you understand how they work, Soo-jin explained. But I designed those systems to be interconnected. The power grid, the climate control, the gravity generators, they all work together. If you try to fix one without understanding the others, you make things worse. So what are they doing? Panicking mostly. They're replacing components that don't need replacing. They're running diagnostics that don't tell them anything useful. They're treating symptoms instead of understanding the disease. She pulled up another report. It's not just the Nexus, look at this. The Veltharian industrial complex on Tarsus 7 shut down completely last week. They can't get their automated systems to coordinate. 30,000 workers are sitting idle because the machines won't talk to each other. Didn't we design that coordination system? We improved their existing system. They had separate controllers for each production line. We integrated them so the whole factory worked as one unit. Efficiency increased by 300%. But now that we're gone, they can't figure out how to maintain the integration. They're reverting to the old system, which means their production drops back to pre-human levels. Do-hyun sipped his coffee thoughtfully. How long can the council survive like this? Survive? Indefinitely. They're not going to collapse, but their whole civilization is going to take a massive step backward. Economically, technologically, maybe even socially. They built their success on a foundation they didn't realize was there. Us. A communication console beeped. Soo-jin walked over and accepted the incoming message. It was from Admiral Taewoo at Earth Defense Command. Engineer Soo-jin. The Admiral's face appeared on screen. We're seeing an interesting development. Several species are starting to break ranks from the Council. Which species? The Relax Consortium just announced they're opening direct trade negotiations with us. The Ferozi Union is asking about technology exchange programs. The Denari Collective wants to hire human engineers for their space station projects. Soo-jin smiled. The smaller species are getting smart. They see what's happening to the big powers. Exactly. The Council's weakness is becoming obvious, and the species that were always marginalized are realizing they don't have to go through Council bureaucracy anymore. They can work with us directly. What does President Mirai say? She's authorized bilateral agreements on a case-by-case basis. We're not trying to build our own empire. We just want fair partnerships. After the admiral signed off, Sujin returned to watching the construction drones. Tohyun joined her again. You know what's ironic? He said. The council wanted to control our expansion. Instead, we're expanding faster than ever. Last count, we have colonization missions heading to 8 new systems. 10, actually, Sujin corrected. 2 more launched this morning. Without council restrictions, we can move at our own pace. And the colonies are thriving. No more waiting years for approval to build new settlements. No more council observers questioning every decision. Sujin nodded. She had visited 3 colonies since leaving the Nexus station. All of them were booming. Population was growing. Infrastructure was expanding. New technologies were being developed and implemented without bureaucratic delays. Meanwhile, in council space, things continued to deteriorate. On Kresh Theta, the medical crisis had reached critical levels. Without human expertise, the hospitals could only perform basic procedures. Advanced surgeries were impossible. Experimental treatments had to be abandoned. The Kresh Medical Authority issued a desperate call for any doctors with experience in human medical technology. No one answered. The human doctors were all working in human space now, building hospitals on colony worlds, researching new treatments without council restrictions. The Kresh tried to hire consultants offering enormous salaries. But humanity's new policy was clear. No individual could work for council species without government approval, and approval was rarely granted. Humanity had learned from history. They wouldn't let their experts be lured away one by one. The Thornian agricultural situation was even more dire. The disease that had appeared in their crops was spreading. Their scientists couldn't identify it. Their farmers couldn't stop it. Entire harvests were failing. A Thornian agricultural minister sent a priority message to Earth requesting assistance. President Mirai read the message in her office, then called an emergency cabinet meeting. They're asking for help, she told her advisors. 3 farming worlds are facing potential famine. They want to hire our agronomists. Trade Minister Hiram frowned. 3 months ago, they were demanding we submit to their authority. Now they want our help. People are going to starve if we don't help, Foreign Secretary Junho pointed out. Then maybe the council leadership should have thought about that before they tried to control us, Admiral Taewoo said bluntly. President Mirai held up her hand. I understand the anger, but we're not going to let people starve out of spite. That's not who we are. However, we're also not going back to the old system where we help them and they treat us like servants. What do you propose? Asked Science Director Doan. We help on our terms. We send agronomists to assist with the disease crisis. In exchange, the Thornian Federation formally recognizes our colonies in the disputed border systems and signs a non-aggression treaty. Minister Hiram smiled. You're using their crisis to establish our legitimacy. I'm using their crisis to build a new relationship based on mutual respect, Mirai corrected. They need to understand that if they want human expertise, they have to treat us as equals. The offer was sent. The Thornian Federation accepted within hours. They had no choice. 2 human agronomist teams were dispatched to the affected worlds. The disease was identified within days. It was a mutated fungus that required a specialized treatment. The humans had seen similar organisms before and knew how to handle it. The crops were saved, the famine was prevented, and the Thornian Federation became the first major council power to officially recognize human independence. The Veltharian Chancellor watched these developments with growing alarm. His own territory was struggling with infrastructure failures. His military was operating at reduced efficiency. His economy was contracting for the first time in a century. And now the Thornians were making deals with the humans. He called a secret meeting with the Kresh ambassador and the leaders of several other major species. They met in a secure chamber away from official records. We need to face reality, the Chancellor said, his 3 eyes focused intently on his counterparts. The humans aren't coming back, and without them our civilization is falling apart. It's not that bad, the Kresh ambassador protested. Isn't it? Your medical system is in crisis. The Thornian agriculture nearly collapsed. My industrial output has dropped 40%. The Nexus station has had 17 major system failures in 3 months. How much worse does it need to get? A representative from the Malthusian Empire spoke up. What are you suggesting? That we apologize to the humans? I'm suggesting we were wrong, the Chancellor said quietly. We thought we were the senior partners in galactic civilization. We thought humanity was a junior species that needed our guidance. But the truth is, they were holding us together. We just didn't see it because our pride blinded us. The room fell silent. Finally, the Kresh ambassador spoke. Even if that's true, what can we do? We issued ultimatums. We tried to force them into submission. They told us exactly what they thought of our authority. Why would they help us now? Because humans are strange, the Chancellor said. They just helped the Thornians even though the Thornians tried to control them. They're not driven by pride or revenge. They're driven by something else. Something we don't fully understand. Are you suggesting we ask for help? I'm suggesting we need to start treating them the way we should have treated them from the beginning. As equals, as partners, as people whose contributions we value and respect back on New Sol Station. Sujin received a message from an old colleague at the Nexus Station. A Veltharian engineer named Court, asking for advice on the power distribution problems. She thought about ignoring it. She had moved on. She had new projects, new challenges. The Nexus was the Council's problem now. But then she thought about the thousands of people living on that station. Scientists merch. 6 months after humanity's withdrawal, the Craven swarm appeared at the edge of Council space. They came without warning, erupting from an unexplored nebula like a plague of locusts. Their ships were organic, grown rather than built, and they moved with terrifying coordination. The first world they hit was a Veltharian mining colony called Hexus 7. The attack lasted 4 hours. When it was over, the colony was stripped clean. Every building, every piece of equipment, every scrap of metal was gone. The 10,000 colonists were simply missing. The Council fleet responded immediately. 20 warships jumped into the system, ready to face the threat. What they found shocked them. The Craven ships moved like a single organism, each vessel perfectly synchronized with the others. When the Council fleet tried to engage, the Craven formation split, reformed and attacked from 3 directions simultaneously. The battle was a disaster. 8 Council ships were destroyed. The rest retreated in disorder. At Earth's Strategic Command, young analyst Kyung-soo monitored the battle reports with growing concern. He had been tracking the Craven swarm for weeks, ever since long-range sensors detected unusual activity in the nebula region. Now his fears were confirmed. He compiled his analysis and sent it up the chain of command. Within an hour, he was summoned to Admiral Taewoo's office. "Tell me what I'm looking at," the Admiral said, gesturing to the tactical display. Kyung-soo pulled up his data. The Craven swarm is a hive mind species. Every ship is controlled by a central intelligence. That's why they coordinate so perfectly. They don't need communication, don't need to plan tactics. They just act as one. How do you fight something like that? You disrupt their coordination. You force them to split their attention across multiple threats. You move faster than they can adapt. Kyung-soo paused. Basically, you need adaptive tactics, real-time coordination, and decentralized command. Everything the Council fleet doesn't have. Admiral Taewoo studied the tactical display. How are they fighting now? Like they always have. Rigid formations, preset battle plans, centralized command structure. The Craven are taking them apart because the Council can't adapt fast enough. Could we fight them? Kyung-soo didn't hesitate. Yes, our fleet is designed for adaptive warfare. Every ship commander has authority to make tactical decisions. Our coordination software allows real-time adjustments. We could handle the Craven. Should we offer assistance? That's above my pay grade, sir. The Admiral smiled grimly. Mine too. But I'll pass your analysis to the President. The Craven didn't stop with Hexus 7. Over the next 2 weeks, they struck 4 more colonies. The pattern was always the same. Overwhelming attack, complete stripping of resources, total disappearance of the population. The Council fleet tried to intercept them repeatedly. They failed every time, casualties mounted. Not just military, but civilian. Millions of people evacuated from threatened worlds. Entire sectors were abandoned as the Council fleet pulled back to defensive positions around core systems. The Veltharian Chancellor watched his strategic displays with growing horror. His military advisors presented options, but every scenario ended badly. The Craven were too coordinated, too fast, too adaptive. What about our contingency plans? He demanded. The tactical protocols we developed for large-scale threats? His chief military advisor looked uncomfortable. Those protocols were developed with human assistance, Chancellor. Humans designed the coordination software. Humans trained our officers in adaptive tactics. Humans integrated our separate fleet commands into a unified response system. So use those systems now. We've tried. Without humans maintaining them, the systems don't work properly. Ships can't coordinate effectively. Tactical data doesn't flow the way it should. We're back to operating like we did 30 years ago. 30 years ago, we didn't face threats like the Kraven. No, we didn't. 30 years ago, we relied on humanity to handle threats like this. The Chancellor slumped in his chair. Around him, his advisors looked equally defeated. The truth was undeniable. The Council fleet wasn't just weaker without humans. It was fundamentally broken. On Kresh Prime, the ambassador convened an emergency session of the Council. Representatives attended from across Council space, many appearing as holograms because travel was too dangerous now. "We need to discuss our options," the ambassador said. "The Kraven Swarm represents an existential threat. At their current rate of advance, they'll reach core Council worlds within 3 months. We need to ask the humans for help," the Thornian defense minister said bluntly. Several representatives objected immediately. The Malthusian Emperor's hologram flickered with indignation. "Ask the species we tried to control for help? The humiliation would be unbearable." "More unbearable than extinction," the minister shot back. The Veltharian Chancellor spoke quietly. "The minister is right. Pride is a luxury we can no longer afford. The question is not whether to ask the humans for help. The question is whether they'll agree to help us." "Why wouldn't they?" asked a representative from a minor species. "They helped the Thornians with their agricultural crisis." "Because the Kraven aren't our problem alone," the Chancellor explained. "If the Council falls, the Kraven will move into human space eventually. It's in their interest to stop the threat now rather than later. But they might decide to wait, to let us weaken ourselves fighting and then deal with the Kraven from a position of strength." "Would humans do that?" the Kresh ambassador asked. "Let billions die just for strategic advantage?" No one had an answer. Captain Daehyun commanded the human warship Indomitable, one of Earth's newest destroyers. His ship was stationed near the border between human and Council space, watching the Kraven situation develop. His crew was restless. They watched Council ships limping past, damaged and desperate. They heard the reports of colonies being destroyed. Several crew members had asked him when they would intervene. "We follow orders," Daehyun told them. "Earth will decide our course of action." But privately, he understood their frustration. The Indomitable could make a difference. His ship was fast, well-armed, and crewed by people who knew how to fight. Every instinct told him to cross that border and engage the enemy. His communications officer approached. "Captain, we're receiving a distress call from a Council transport. They're carrying refugees from Hexus 12. They've encountered a Kraven scout ship and are requesting any assistance." Daehyun checked his tactical display. The transport was 10 minutes away at maximum speed. The Kraven scout was already engaging them. "Sir, that transport has 4,000 people on board," the officer said quietly, "including children." Daehyun made his decision in 3 seconds. Navigation set course for the transport. Maximum speed. Weapons prepare to engage the Kraven vessel. Communications notify Earth Defense Command of our actions. The Indomitable accelerated toward the battle. They arrived to find the transport under heavy fire, its shields failing. Daehyun didn't waste time on warnings or negotiations. His ship opened fire on the Kraven scout, weapons designed by human engineers striking with devastating accuracy. The Kraven ship tried to flee, but the Indomitable was faster. Daehyun's tactical officer predicted the enemy's movements and placed their ship perfectly to cut off the retreat. 3 minutes after engagement began, the Kraven scout was destroyed. The Council transport's captain sent a message of thanks. Daehyun accepted it briefly, then ordered his ship back to its patrol route. "Sir, Earth Command is requesting a report," his communications officer said. Daehyun expected a reprimand for crossing into Council space without authorization. Instead, Admiral Taewoo appeared on screen with an expression of approval. "Good work, Captain. You saved 4,000 lives today." "I acted without orders, sir." "You acted according to your judgment in an emergency situation. That's what we train you to do. But now I have real orders for you. President Mirai has authorized me to tell you that if you encounter any more situations like this, you are to render assistance. We're not going to stand by and watch civilians die regardless of politics." "Understood, sir." "What about the Kraven threat overall?" "We're still deciding." "But Captain, Between you and me, I don't think we're going to sit this one out much longer. It's not in our nature. Over the next week, similar incidents occurred across the border. Human ships rescued council vessels in distress. Human patrols drove off Craven scouts. Human stations provided emergency aid to refugee convoys. The council noticed. More importantly, their citizens noticed. Social media and council space filled with images of human ships arriving to save council citizens. Stories spread of human crews risking their lives to protect people who weren't even their own. Back in the council chambers, the political pressure became unbearable. Representatives demanded action. Citizens demanded protection. The military demanded resources they didn't have. Finally, the Veltharian chancellor made a decision. He sent a private message to the Kresh ambassador and the Thornian defense minister. We need to send a delegation to Earth. Not an official council delegation, that would be premature and might be rejected. Just the three of us representing our governments. We go in person, we admit we were wrong, and we ask for help. Will they help us? The Thornian asked. I don't know, but I know they're already helping, even without being asked. That has to mean something. The Kresh ambassador agreed. When do we leave? Tomorrow. Ambassador Jiho stood at the observation window of his office on New Busan Station and watched the diplomatic shuttle approach. He recognized it immediately, Veltharian design but stripped of all official markings. Someone was trying to arrive quietly. His aide Bora entered the office. Sir, we've identified the passengers. The Veltharian chancellor, the Kresh ambassador, and the Thornian defense minister. No one else? No security detail, no staff, just them. Jiho raised an eyebrow. The three most powerful figures in the council, traveling alone to a human station. That's either incredibly brave or incredibly desperate. Probably both, Bora said. Do you want security present for the meeting? No. If they wanted to cause trouble, they'd have brought an army. This is something else. He paused. Set up the conference room. Make it comfortable but not too formal. And Bora record everything. This conversation is going to be historic one way or another. An hour later, Jiho sat across a table from three beings who had once dictated terms to humanity. The Veltharian chancellor looked older than he remembered, his blue skin duller, his three eyes shadowed with fatigue. The Kresh ambassador's crystalline exoskeleton had lost some of its shine. The Thornian defense minister's fur was graying around his massive shoulders. They looked like what they were, leaders carrying the weight of their failing civilizations. Jiho waited. He was not going to make this easy by speaking first. Finally, the Veltharian chancellor broke the silence. Ambassador Jiho, thank you for agreeing to meet with us. You traveled a long way. I'm curious to hear why. The chancellor took a deep breath. We came to apologize. Jiho kept his expression neutral, but inside he felt a jolt of surprise. Apologize for what specifically? For everything, the Kresh ambassador said, her voice clicking softly. For treating your species as inferiors, for demanding you submit to our authority, for failing to recognize the contributions you made to our civilization, for our arrogance and our blindness. The Thornian defense minister leaned forward. We thought we were the adults and you were the children. We thought we knew better because we were older. We were wrong. 6 months ago, you were quite certain you were right, Jiho observed. 6 months ago, our civilization was functional, the chancellor replied. Now our infrastructure is failing, our military is inadequate, and our people are dying. We've learned a hard lesson about what happens when pride replaces wisdom. Jiho studied them carefully. They seemed sincere, but sincerity didn't change the past. What do you want from us? We need your help against the Craven Swarm, the Thornian said bluntly. Our fleet can't stop them. At their current rate of advance, they'll reach our core worlds within weeks. Billions will die. And you think humanity should save you? No, the chancellor said quietly. We think humanity might choose to save us if we ask properly. Your ships are already rescuing our civilians. Your captains are engaging Craven scouts on their own initiative. You're helping us even though we don't deserve it. So you're counting on human compassion to fix your problems. We're hoping human compassion extends to preventing a genocide, the Kresh ambassador said. But we're not just asking for charity. We're offering a new relationship. She pulled out a data tablet and slid it across the table. Jiho picked it up and scanned the contents. His eyes widened slightly as he read. This is a formal recognition of all human colonies, including the disputed systems. Full autonomy for human space. Technology sharing based on mutual agreement rather than council mandate. Equal representation in any future galactic governance body. Removal of all previous restrictions. That's what we're offering, the Chancellor confirmed. Everything you asked for 6 months ago. Everything we should have given you from the beginning. Why should we believe you this time? Because we're not negotiating from strength anymore, the Thornian said. Last time we made demands because we thought we held all the power. We were wrong. Now we understand the truth. The galaxy needs humanity more than humanity needs the galaxy. Jiho set down the tablet. You realize that even if I recommend acceptance, the decision isn't mine. President Mirai and Earth's government will make the final call. We understand. That's why we came to you first. You know us. You've negotiated with us for years. Your government will want to know if we're sincere. Are we? Jiho considered. He had spent decades reading alien body language, interpreting subtle cues, detecting lies and half-truths. These three weren't lying. They were terrified, yes. They were desperate, certainly. But they were also genuinely remorseful. I believe you're sincere, he said finally. But you should know that Earth has been debating this very question for weeks. There are strong opinions on both sides. We know, the Chancellor said. We've been monitoring your public communications. Some of your people think you should help us. Others think you should let us face the consequences of our actions. We deserve both responses. What would you do in our position? Jiho asked curiously. The three representatives looked at each other. The Thornian spoke. Honestly, if you had treated us the way we treated you, we would let you burn. That's the kind of species we are. But you're not like us. You save people even when they don't deserve it. That's what makes you dangerous and what makes you indispensable. There was a long silence. Finally, Jiho stood. I'll send your offer to Earth immediately. I'll include my assessment that you're negotiating in good faith. But I need to be clear. If Earth agrees to help, it won't be like the old days. We won't be junior partners following your lead. We'll be equals making decisions together. We understand, the Kresh ambassador said. We're ready for that. And if the Kraven are defeated, there has to be a new structure for galactic governance. Not the old council with new rules. Something genuinely different that treats all species fairly. Agreed, the Chancellor said immediately. Jiho walked them to their shuttle. As they prepared to depart, the Thornian turned back. Ambassador, one more thing. If Earth decides to help us, how quickly can your fleet respond? We've been preparing for weeks. Admiral Tewu has 30 warships positioned along the border. They can be in position within 48 hours of receiving orders. 30 ships? We have over 200 committed to the battle lines. Yes, but our 30 ships will be more effective than your 200. That's not arrogance. It's just reality, the Thornian nodded slowly. We used to think our experience was worth more than your innovation. That's why we're losing. After they left, Jiho returned to his office and initiated an encrypted connection to Earth. President Mirai appeared on screen, her expression alert despite the late hour. I saw the report from station security, she said. The Council's Big Three came calling? Yes, they apologized. They offered everything we asked for 6 months ago, and they requested military assistance against the Kraven. Do you believe them? I believe they've learned humility the hard way. Whether that lesson is permanent or just a temporary response to crisis, I can't say. Mirai nodded. I'm calling an emergency cabinet meeting. We'll have a decision within 24 hours. What's your recommendation? Jiho thought carefully before answering. Madam President, I think we should help them. Not because they deserve it, but because millions of innocent people don't deserve to die. And because if we don't stop the Kraven now, we'll have to fight them eventually anyway. Better to fight alongside allies, even reluctant ones, than to fight alone later. Admiral Tewu said the same thing. So did Foreign Secretary Junho. Trade Minister Hiram is still opposed, but I think she's softening. Whatever you decide, do it quickly. The situation is deteriorating fast. The screen went dark. Jiho walked back to the observation window and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Kraven were advancing. People were dying. Civilizations were crumbling, and humanity had to decide whether to save them. His communicator buzzed. It was Captain Daehyun from the Indomitable. Ambassador, we just received another distress call. Colony transport under attack. Kraven assault ship. They're outgunned. How long until the transport is destroyed? 10 minutes, maybe less. Jiho made his decision. Captain, engage at your discretion. Save them if you can. Yes, sir. Sir, when are we going to stop fighting individual battles and start fighting the war? Soon, Captain. Very soon. He ended the call and looked out at the stars again. Somewhere out there, the Indomitable was racing to save lives, just like human ships were doing all along the border. Not because anyone ordered them to, not because it served strategic interests, but because it was the right thing to do. That was humanity's strength. That was what the Council had never understood. Humans didn't help people because they had to. They helped because they chose to. And that choice, Jiho realized, was what would define humanity's place in the galaxy. Not force, not technology, not diplomatic skill, choice, the freedom to choose and the wisdom to choose well. His communicator buzzed again. This time it was President Mirai. "We've made our decision," she said. "Get those 3 representatives back here. We're going to make them an offer." The debate in Earth's government chambers lasted 3 days. President Mirai listened to every argument, considered every perspective, and weighed every consequence. Admiral Tewu presented military assessments. Trade Minister Hiram outlined economic projections. Science Director Doan analyzed the Craven threat. Foreign Secretary Junho discussed diplomatic implications. On the 3rd day, Mirai made her decision. "We will intervene against the Craven swarm," she announced to her cabinet. "But not as subordinates of the Council, not as hired mercenaries. We help as equals or we don't help at all." "What are your terms?" Admiral Tewu asked. "First, the Council must formally recognize human sovereignty over all our colonies and territorial claims. No disputes, no conditions, full recognition. Second, any joint military operation will be under combined command with equal authority for human and Council officers. Third, after the Craven are defeated, we establish a new galactic governance structure based on equality, not hierarchy. Fourth, all previous restrictions on human activity are permanently removed." Trade Minister Hiram nodded slowly. "Those are strong terms. Will they accept? They don't have a choice. The Craven will reach their core worlds in weeks. They need us more than they've ever needed anyone." "And if they refuse?" Science Director Doan asked. "Then we secure our borders and wait. Eventually the Craven will either destroy the Council or be destroyed by them. Either way, we'll deal with whoever's left." Mirai sent her terms to the 3 Council representatives waiting at New Busan Station. The response came within an hour. They accepted everything. The human fleet mobilized. 30 warships, including the Indomitable, formed up at the border. Admiral Tewu transferred his flag to the battleship Defiant and prepared for deployment. Captain Daehyun received his orders with quiet satisfaction. Finally, they would stop fighting individual skirmishes and face the real threat. His crew cheered when he announced they were going to war. The human fleet jumped into Council space 48 hours after Earth's decision. They didn't arrive quietly or cautiously. They came in full battle formation, weapons active, shields at maximum. They wanted the Craven to know they were there. Admiral Tewu established contact with the Council fleet commander, a Veltharian admiral named Korthas. The alien appeared on screen, his 3 eyes showing surprise at the human arrival. "Admiral Tewu, we received word you were coming, but we didn't expect you so soon." "We don't waste time, Admiral. What's the current situation?" Korthas pulled up a tactical display. "The Craven have concentrated their forces here in the Tertian sector. They're preparing to assault 3 major worlds simultaneously. Our fleet is positioned to defend, but we're outnumbered." Tewu studied the display. "Your defensive formation is too spread out. You're trying to protect 3 worlds at once, which means you're weak everywhere. We can't abandon any of those worlds. There are billions of people. You won't have to. But we need to change the strategy. The Craven fight as a hive mind. They expect us to defend predictably. Instead, we're going to attack unpredictably." Over the next 6 hours, Tewu worked with Korthas to reorganize the combined fleet. It wasn't easy. Council officers were used to rigid command structures and preset battle plans. Human officers worked with flexible tactics and real-time adaptation. But gradually they found a rhythm. Human ships would provide the mobile strike force, hitting the Craven from unexpected angles. Council ships would hold defensive positions and provide supporting fire. Together, they would turn the Craven's coordination into a weakness. The battle began at dawn on the first world, a creche colony called Thesia 7. The Craven came in a massive wave, hundreds of organic ships moving with perfect synchronization. The Council fleet moved to intercept, forming the defensive line they had planned. The Craven formation split, preparing to envelope the defenders. It was a standard hive mind tactic, surround and overwhelm. But this time the defenders weren't alone. The human fleet appeared behind the Craven, jumping in from an unexpected vector. 30 ships against hundreds, but those 30 ships moved like lightning. They struck at the Craven formation's weak points, disrupted their coordination, forced them to split their attention. Captain Daehyun commanded the Indomitable through a series of attack runs that would have been impossible for Council ships. His crew worked with precision born of constant training. His weapons officer predicted enemy movements. His navigator placed them exactly where they needed to be. His engineer kept the ship running at 110% capacity. They destroyed 6 Craven ships in the first 15 minutes. Across the battle space, other human ships were doing the same. They weren't fighting the Craven head-on. They were confusing them, disrupting them, forcing the hive mind to make decisions instead of following instinct. The Council fleet, seeing the Craven disorganized, pressed their advantage. For the first time in months, they were winning. The battle lasted 4 hours. When it was over, the Craven retreated, leaving behind dozens of destroyed ships. The colony was saved. Admiral Korthas sent a message to Admiral Taewoo. "I've been commanding fleets for 30 years. I've never seen anyone fight like that." "You've been fighting old wars," Taewoo replied. "The Craven are a new threat. They require new tactics. Can you teach us?" "We can try. But Admiral, teaching tactics takes time. We need to win this war now." Over the next 2 weeks, the combined fleet fought 6 major battles across Council space. The pattern was always the same. Human ships provided mobile offense. Council ships provided stable defense. Together, they were devastating. The Craven tried to adapt. They changed their formations, altered their attack patterns, even attempted to divide their forces to reduce the effectiveness of human disruption tactics. But every time they adapted, the humans adapted faster. Analyst Kyung-soo, now assigned to Admiral Taewoo's staff, watched the battles unfold from the Defiance Tactical Center. He tracked the Craven's learning patterns, predicted their next moves, and helped develop counter-strategies. "They're getting desperate," he told Admiral Taewoo after the 6th battle. "They're taking heavier losses with each engagement. At this rate, they'll either retreat completely or make one massive final assault. Which do you think they'll choose?" "Final assault. Hive minds don't retreat easily. It's not in their nature. They'll throw everything at us in one location, trying to break through to a core world." "Where?" Kyung-soo pulled up star charts. "Here. Veltharia Prime, the Chancellor's homeworld. It's the symbolic heart of Council space. If they take it, the Council collapses psychologically even if they're not defeated militarily." Admiral Taewoo immediately contacted Admiral Korthas. "We need to prepare for a major assault on Veltharia Prime. That's 3 weeks away by the Craven's current route. They'll accelerate. They'll be there in 1 week, and they'll bring everything they have." Korthas looked skeptical but agreed to prepare. He had learned to trust human tactical assessment. 7 days later, the Craven arrived at Veltharia Prime with over 400 ships. It was the largest force anyone had ever seen them deploy. They intended to overwhelm the defenders through sheer numbers, but the defenders were ready. The combined fleet had assembled, 200 Council ships and all 30 human vessels, positioned in a defensive formation that Admiral Taewoo had personally designed. The battle that followed would be studied for generations. The Craven came in waves, each one larger than the last. The Council ships held their positions, absorbing the assault, providing stable firing platforms. The human ships moved through the chaos like predators, striking at coordination nodes, breaking up formations, creating gaps in the Craven lines. Captain Daehyun pushed the Indomitable harder than ever before. His ship took damage but kept fighting. His crew never faltered. When their forward shields failed, they adjusted their attack angle. When their weapons overheated, they rotated systems. When the Craven tried to surround them, they accelerated through the trap and emerged on the other side. The battle lasted 18 hours. It was brutal, exhausting, and desperate. Ships on both sides were destroyed. Brave crews died. But slowly, inevitably, the combined fleet gained the upper hand. The turning point came when Kyung-soo identified the Craven command vessel, the central node coordinating the entire swarm. It was hiding in the middle of their formation, protected by hundreds of other ships. Admiral Taewoo made a decision that other admirals would have considered insane. He ordered all 30 human ships to punch through the Craven formation and destroy the command vessel. It worked. The human ships, moving with perfect coordination, carved through the enemy like a blade. The Indomitable led the charge, with Captain Dahyun calling out targets and vectors. Behind them, the Council fleet provided covering fire, keeping the Craven distracted. They reached the command vessel. Admiral Taewoo himself ordered the final strike. The Defiant's main weapons fired, joined by every human ship in range. The Craven command vessel exploded in a burst of organic matter and energy. The effect was immediate. Without their central coordination, the Craven swarm fell into chaos. Ships drifted aimlessly. Some tried to retreat, others attacked randomly. The hive mind was broken. The Council fleet finished them off. Within 2 hours, the Craven threat was eliminated. The survivors fled back into the nebula they had emerged from, never to return. The calm,